Thank you all very much. Good morning. Good morning. Vicki, thank you. Everybody have a seat. Vicki, thank you for that introduction, for all of your service to our country and your leadership at this institute, as well as in many other arenas. I am also reminded, as I look out at this beautiful replica of the United States Senate, and a small point of New Hampshire pride, the desks were built by a New Hampshire craftsman who is quite wonderful. But, you know, I am reminded that it is almost an exact replica of the United States Senate. It is different in that it is accessible to people who might use a wheelchair. It is different because it has digital screens and technology available on the walls. And I find myself thinking how beautifully that represents Ted Kennedy's legacy, because Ted understood the institution of the United States Senate. He loved it dearly. This wonderful institute is an extraordinary reflection of not only the physical being, but how the United States Senate should operate. But Senator Ted Kennedy also understood that our country is forward-looking, and that to honor our values, one has to be willing to change and adjust and make progress. So as I looked around this morning, I thought about that. I thought about how these improvements would actually be quite good in the United States Senate. And I also thought about my colleague, Tammy Duckworth, who just about 10 days ago was the first United States Senator ever to come onto the floor holding her newborn baby. You know, one of our colleagues was asked by a reporter what he thought about our changes in the rules to allow people to bring children onto the floor. And he said, well, I guess it's okay, but I mean, what would happen if there would be 10 children on the floor? And I found myself thinking, one can only hope. But I also want to tell you all one other story before I begin my remarks. There was a day, probably a couple of months ago, that was just a particularly, I don't know, hectic day. And it was hectic in the way I dislike, which is the schedule keeps changing for no good reason. So you're having a vote, now you're not having a vote, yes, you are having a vote. So you have people in your office and you're trying to meet with them and you can't meet with them. And this type of variation drives me modestly crazy. And so I was in the cloakroom and trying to kind of get everybody to agree on what the schedule, in my office, what the schedule now looked like. So I went into one of the old phone booths that are in the cloakroom. And of course, they don't have phones anymore because we all have our cell phones, but they allow you some privacy to sit and make some calls while you're in the cloakroom. And as I was kind of texting and calling and saying, what the heck is going on? Can't anybody give us some certainty on X, Y, or Z? I looked up, and there was a picture of Ted Kennedy, photograph. I just happened to sit in that phone booth that day. And it was a picture of Ted, white-haired, so I don't know how old precisely, with an oceanscape in the background. And he was looking clear ahead, just blue-eyed, strong, serene. Not only did the picture bring my blood pressure down, I thought about Senator Ted Kennedy's confidence in our country, his confidence in the next generation, his sense that no matter what struggles we went through, things were going to be okay, because we are a great country and we are capable of dealing with great difficulties and great challenges and making great progress as a result. So I wanted to share that with all of you, because that too is what this chamber is about. And that too is what being in the United States Senate is about. I am also so grateful today to be here with my congressional colleagues, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro and Congresswoman Catherine Clark, who you'll be hearing from later, as well as so many other women leaders at the local and state level. And a special thank you to Mary Grant and everybody here at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for once again hosting this conference in leadership. Every American, women and men, must be involved in the conversations that will shape the future of our communities, our state, our nation. And I'm glad that we're all here exploring ways that we can continue to work together to make that happen. Because we know that when diverse voices, including the voices of women, are at the table and at the head of the table, the outcomes are better for all of us. Standing here today in this replica of the United States Senate chamber is quite a remarkable sight. I can only imagine the progress and change we could make for our country if the floor of the actual Senate looked a little bit more like this room today. As of this month, we have set another record for the number of women serving in the Senate. And while 23 women senators is an important milestone, women make up nearly 51% of our country's population. So we need to do far better. We also need to do better in the House of Representatives, where women make up just over 19% of its members. And in our state governments, where we have just 6 women governors across the entire country. During my time as governor of New Hampshire, 4th graders would visit the State House all the time. It's part of their curriculum. And whenever I could, I would meet with the 4th graders. And occasionally I would meet a student who was unaware that a woman could actually be governor. But in New Hampshire, I am the 2nd female governor. So maybe our kids are a little bit more used to it, as I discovered one day when I placed a call to one of our state senators. And apparently the call came in while he was driving. He was with his 2 daughters in the car. They saw my name come up on the phone. He rightly didn't answer it at the time. He called me back later, but he reported in that after seeing my name on the phone, one of the girls asked him whether he planned to run for governor someday. And he asked them, both kids, what they thought. Should he? And his older daughter said, "No, Dad, you shouldn't." And when he asked her why, she said, "Daddy, you're not a girl." And you know, the fact that we have had women in leadership in New Hampshire also brings to mind the fact that I don't think it's an accident that Hillary Clinton was the first woman to win a presidential primary, and she won it in the state of New Hampshire. The research tells us that when women are in elected office, voters kind of get used to it, and voting for women can kind of get contagious. So I want to make sure that all of today's girls grow up never doubting that they could be a governor or a senator or president. Because balanced representation matters. When more women are in the room where it happens, we all, men and women, get better results. Research shows that whether in the private or public sector, when both men and women are at the table, we make better decisions because a wider variety of experiences are shared and considered. Women offer balance. We offer a fresh perspective. We collaborate in unique ways and offer important ideas that may have otherwise been absent from the decision-making process. In a study of almost 2,400 global corporations from 2005 to 2011, Credit Suisse found that companies with at least one woman on their board outperformed similar companies with all-male boards by 26%. And a study from the global accounting firm Grant Thornton found that in 2015, American publicly traded companies with all-male executive boards missed out on $567 billion in profit gains. But even in the face of this data that shows the value of inclusion, women continue to be outnumbered in critical sectors where power is obtained and exercised. And we're outnumbered by large margins. Just last week, the New York Times published a striking analysis that showed that the number of women CEOs of Fortune 500 companies is about equal to the number of male Fortune 500 CEOs who are named John. And female Fortune 500 CEOs are even outnumbered by their male counterparts named James. That's unacceptable. While we have made great strides, breaking many glass ceilings and persistently chipping away at others, the simple fact is that women continue to be vastly underrepresented in the rooms where decisions are made, decisions that are of critical importance to their communities, their businesses, their workplace, their lives, and the lives of their families. I've been encouraged, however, by the outpouring of energy and dedication that we have seen from women across our nation in the wake of the 2016 election. We've seen millions of women join in marches around the country, making their voices heard to those in power, especially their elected leaders. Then women stood up and said, "Me too," in order to demand accountability and equality. And now they are running for office in record numbers. In fact, the 2018 elections will set an all-time record for the number of women who are running for Congress. This is critically important because if we want to make progress across the country, if we want to build better schools, boost wages, address healthcare needs, improve public safety, have a smarter, more effective, more just, and less costly foreign policy, and see our economy truly take off, we need women to succeed. We need to keep pushing for equal representation. And to do that, we must look to places where we've had success in electing women leaders. I'm proud to come from a state with a strong tradition of women serving in elected leadership. Because of New Hampshire's citizen-led democracy, our values, and our tradition of volunteerism and civic participation, there are many opportunities for women to get involved in the electoral process and to learn that they are good at it and that they can make a difference. From our large volunteer legislature of 400 representatives to local boards, committees, and community organizations, we have been able to make women's leadership much more of a norm in New Hampshire than it is in other parts of the country. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into that. One of them is that in most of these positions, these elected officers, one is called on to do a lot of work for little or no pay. New Hampshire's legislators are paid $100 a year. That is set in our Constitution. So we women always tell each other that serving in the legislature is hard and time-consuming work for very little pay, so of course women do it. But on a more serious note, as women have stepped up, as they began to lead the conversation and push for change, they've had an impact. It's no accident that a woman governor, Jeanne Shaheen, pushed for expanded public kindergarten. We were the last state in the country that didn't have mandatory public kindergarten in every community. It's no accident that a woman executive counselor named Ruth Griffin, upon hearing that the only vocational training in our women's prison was sewing, this was like in 2000, pushed for improved vocational training for New Hampshire's female inmates. And I'd add it's no accident that as a woman governor, I finally got the shovels in the ground to build a new, modern, updated women's prison. Their focus, these women's focus on these issues, reflected their experience, an experience that so many women share, that when every member of a family is able to succeed, the whole family gets stronger. these ideas and opinions bore fruit, became policies that changed people's lives for the better because women fought tirelessly to claim their seats at the table. And it's up to all of us to keep encouraging more women to run for office in every state and in every level of government, to give them the confidence to say, yes, I can do this, to realize that they can overcome the challenges of balancing many commitments, long nights, grueling campaigns, that they can show those who doubted them that they were wrong. Now, I do think it is true that women face unique demands that many men don't. There continue to be systemic barriers for women who choose to run for office. And given our roles in our families, many of us have to consider the day-to-day impact that taking on important leadership roles will have on the lives of those closest to us. But I always urge women who are considering elected office to understand that these challenges are ones that they can address and overcome. If you're thinking about running for office, you need to know that you're not alone, that you'll be surrounded by those who are going through what you are going through. This is particularly true if more and more women run. And women need to know that they can, in fact, break through the barriers that exist in order to make a difference. From my own experience and from getting to know other women in leadership roles, I can comfortably say that despite all of the demands placed on women, we more often than not can find a way to make it work. I first really thought about running for office in 2002. There had been redistricting in New Hampshire, and nobody was clear what the state Senate districts were going to look like till like mid-July. And I thought about running for state rep, which, as you heard, is a small district. But I was sitting in my law firm, and the phone rang, and it was the chair of our state party, and she said, you know, we have this open seat, state Senate seat on the Seacoast. It's based in, you know, biggest town is Exeter, which is my hometown. And she said, you know, you've done this work on this education commission. We all think you'd be really good at this. We'd really like you to run. And I said, well, isn't that nice? That's very flattering. I really appreciate it. I don't think it's really possible. I've got a law practice. I've got kids. My husband's got an intense job. My oldest has disabilities. And I ran through the litany. And she said, well, I hope you'll seriously consider it. By the way, the deadline's tomorrow. So I called my husband and said, you know, isn't this nice? But I went through the whole litany of why I couldn't do it again. And my husband just said, honey, you'd be really good at it. We'll make it work. So that's another key here. I was surrounded by supportive people who encouraged me to keep trying to make a difference. Tom and others who made it clear that they would support me no matter what. So for all of you women who are considering this out there, don't let the people around you undermine your interest or confidence. And if they're doing that, find some other people to hang out with. And while I wasn't successful in that first state Senate election, I ran again 2 years later and won against the same person. And even after another loss 6 years later in the 2010 Tea Party wave that swept our state, my family and friends and colleagues encouraged another run. In 2012, I was elected as New Hampshire's governor, and I was sworn in by a woman Chief Justice of our state Supreme Court in a ceremony that was presided over by a woman Speaker of the House. Today, I am honored to have the distinction of being the second woman in our country's history to serve as both governor and senator. The first being my fellow New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen. So yes, examples, role models, mentorship matter. And I am proud to serve in our nation's first ever all-female, all-Democratic congressional delegation. To truly move our nation and all of our people forward, I'm focused on working across party lines to solve problems, help our businesses and communities thrive, and to keep our country safe. And I have found that more often than not, it is my women colleagues who are focused on putting partisanship aside. Regularly, Democratic and Republican women get together over dinner to foster relationships and find common ground where we can work together. By building these relationships and collaborating together, we've been able to break through gridlock and get results for our people. And our value isn't limited just to the fact that we are working to solve problems, which in this Congress is a feat in and of itself. Our value is also reflected in the challenges that we are prioritizing and the perspectives we bring to tackle them, often bringing forward long-ignored priorities because we have a seat at the table. For example, on the fentanyl, heroin, and opioid crisis, which we all know is ravaging communities in New England and across our country, I've worked with my Republican colleague, Susan Collins of Maine, on legislation called the Supporting Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Act, legislation which works to ensure that grandparents who are raising grandchildren are better able to meet the needs of the children in their care, particularly as more and more of these children's parents are dying or absent as a result of the opioid epidemic. I've worked with Republican Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, another state that is particularly hard hit by this crisis, on legislation to establish comprehensive opioid recovery centers that provide coordinated and comprehensive care to those struggling with addiction, bolstering efforts like recovery housing and support to reintegrate those in recovery back into the workforce. And I've been proud to work with members of both parties, several of them women, as members of the Senate's Common Sense Coalition, which helped reopen our government earlier this year, and then set the foundation for a bipartisan budget agreement that included key priorities like combating the opioid epidemic, investing in public education and college affordability, and giving long-term stability to our budget and our military. We are approaching issues in a way that follows the examples set by our constituents, finding common ground and common purpose. It's not that we don't have disagreements. Often there is a strong battle of ideas. But as we have learned from the example set by Senator Ted Kennedy, we can continue to remain principled and fight for our values while also delivering results for our people and building on the progress that we've made. The American mission, our country's goal, has always been to move forward, to build a brighter future by fully including all of our people in our society, unleashing each individual's talent and energy, reinforcing established strengths, and giving each other the confidence to dare to find new ones. When we bring people in from the margins to hear their thoughts and perspectives, we unleash talent and energy that strengthens all of us. We learn from each other's experiences. We build from collaboration and cooperation. And eventually, we make the compromises that are necessary to make progress and do what is right for the people who we serve. This is not just a process that works in public service. It's something we have to do in every industry and in every community. Taking the time to sit down, listen, and work with someone whose perspective and life experience differs from your own creates a deeper understanding, an understanding in which we can all learn. It builds a deeper sense of the fairness and inclusion that's always been critical to the success of our entire country. And it helps build a future where everyone can get ahead and stay ahead, where each generation is better off than the last. That was part of our founders' genius. They understood that the free exchange of ideas was at the heart of our collective progress. And they understood that we make better decisions when that free exchange is informed by a wide variety of experiences and perspectives, whenever we bring more people to the table. This principle that when we include more people in our civic and economic life, we all get stronger, is the principle that our country was founded on, and it's something we have built on throughout the course of our history. Our founders understood that when we are free to work hard and to follow our dreams, no matter our circumstance or background, we unleash the potential of each of us, and in turn, our economy grows, and the resulting ripple effect strengthens families, communities, and our civic life. Now, I don't want to be too rosy about this. Our founders believed, or said they believed, in the principle that every single person counts. Well, we know they didn't count everybody at first. But they had faith that we'd continue striving to build a more perfect union, that generation after generation would continue to deliver on our nation's promise of equality. And while the road to greater inclusion is not without significant challenges, and boy, are we feeling some of them right now, time and again we have persevered to build a better future. I know everyone in this room is dedicated to the cause of bringing more women to the table, because we know that when more women succeed, we all succeed. That's why we have to keep working together to push women to new levels of leadership, to encourage them to be fearless and take on new challenges, and to prepare them for the success that will build a stronger United States of America. Together, we can help break more glass ceilings and eliminate the gender discrepancies that exist too often in offices, in our boardrooms, and on the floor of the United States Senate. And when we do that, when we can eliminate disparities for women, and other disparities too, we become an even better, stronger, and an even more respected country. So I thank you all for your commitment to that cause and that ideal. This is hard work that we do in a democracy. What our founders set out for us hadn't really ever been tried before, this notion of self-government. It continues to be the greatest experiment in democracy on earth, right? It requires that people share power through the democratic process. That does not come naturally to a lot of people. But we have a process, we have a history, we have a country, and we have determined citizens who understand the value of self-government and the value of inclusion and the kind of progress that we can make when we stay true to it. I hope you all have an incredibly productive day as you dig down into the practical ways that you too can be a part of this, make a difference, and help us build a stronger country. Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.